Many see progress and environmental protection as competing priorities, where one must always be chosen over the other. At ELOS, we see things differently. We see a partnership, a balance between improving the quality of our lives and preserving the places we call home. Our services make it possible for projects to move forward while also ensuring that they comply with all laws and regulations, that sensitive wetlands are not damaged or destroyed, that endangered species and habitats are protected, and that invaluable cultural resources are preserved for future generations. This is where we live, where we play, where we raise our families. We strive for a brighter future, but remain committed to the lands we love. ELOS, where natural environments and human interests intersect.
Good afternoon, everyone. Again, as Bud said, we sincerely appreciate you taking the time to join us today for our webinar. We appreciate your interest and again, just giving us some of your time to go over some new and innovative technologies in the construction management world. So we want to start with a little bit of an introduction of our company and myself before we get into things. So ELOS is a Louisiana-based firm. We were founded in Hammond around 2006. We've been here almost 20 years now. And we started out doing wetland delineations, requesting jurisdictional determinations and permits from the Army Corps. And we had about 20 people or so at that time. And over time, our service lines grew to encompass more and more of the services that our clients required in order to obtain their permits. Being in a disaster-related environment here in Louisiana, we also have become very involved in doing lead, asbestos, and mold, or what we call industrial hygiene work, as well as construction management work, in order to repair after hurricanes and things of that nature. We've grown tremendously, and we recently became a part of the Aventia brand, which encompasses several other environmental firms across the United States that have a similar background and history as ELOS, smaller firms that grew to become well-known professionals in their area. And so now we've all combined into the Aventia brand. So that's just a little bit about ELOS. Myself, I've been with ELOS for a little over 8 years now. I studied biological sciences, environmental sciences at Southeastern Louisiana University here in Hammond, and started shortly after I graduated here at ELOS, and I've been here since. I started out as an environmental scientist, learned a lot about the things that we do, and at that point I became a business development professional for us. I led that team for about 5 years. I recently handed that role off to become a senior project manager. And now I'm using my knowledge from my business development time. I manage all types of projects for ELOS, including construction management type projects. So before we go into some of the new technologies and techniques, we thought that it would be best to give a little overview for anyone who may or may not be familiar with construction management on the call. So there's a process, just like any other type of service, that you go through in order to manage a construction management project. And there are multiple aspects of that we'll look at today, from overall project management to construction engineering and inspection, which I'll refer to as CE&I throughout the presentation. And then your building inspection, so having someone go and actually put their eyes on what's being built. We'll go over what that entails and then go into some new technologies there. So in terms of a construction project, at a very high level, you have project management needs. So this is going to be a team of people who are gathering all the necessary documentation, whether that be safety plans, project plans, required permits, land use access, whatever it might be. This team is going to go about getting all of that documentation into place before the project starts. They're also going to be working on scheduling, identifying resources and allocating those resources to the project. So this is what happens for a variety of type of projects. So, we've listed a few here, but this is only a handful. Of course, construction goes into many things, including recreation and a variety of project types. So the basic process of project management in the construction world is you're going to start with a pre-construction work. Typically, you would arrange and lead a pre-construction meeting with any relevant stakeholders, any project team and contractors that are going to be involved. And that is, in essence, to make sure that everyone's on the same page and has the same understanding of what the project will be. And any questions can get answered at that time as well, or at least be presented. You're going to go over, construction schedules. You'll have any contractors submit schedules, and this will help to determine the start date. And then from there, a notice to proceed gets issued out to the prime firm who's going to manage a lot of the day-to-day activities. So then once things start, then you go into progress tracking of the project. So you'll have daily inspections to ensure compliance. You'll check on progress of the project to make sure it's staying on the schedule that you've set. And you'll arrange progress meetings throughout that time to address any issues that may be slowing down the project or get it back on the right track. And that could include stakeholders, the project team. It could be specific disciplines. It's going to be based on what's going on in the project at that time. So along with those things, at the same time, the project management team will be doing budget management. So they're going to actually verify that the work that's being requested for payment was actually completed. Those materials are on site, they've been constructed, and that the quantities are actually correct, that have been billed. And then at the same time, you're going to be looking for any budget overruns. You're going to make sure, oh, well, maybe we had a material change that may cause our budget to overrun. So you're going to check and adjust throughout the course of the project to make sure you're staying within the budget that was set out. And of course, you're going to prepare documents in regards to that. So you may have change orders in regards to requesting additional funds or a change in material or whatever it may be that needs to be done. And then finally, once you get through the actual construction and you're winding down, you'll have your project closeout process. So this is a lot of documentation, making sure that you have all of your various types of documentation filed, including as-built drawings that typically go to the local municipality. Any change orders, budget changes, quantities, reconciliation, things like that will all be data-based and documented and housed. And then finally, typically you will have some kind of post-construction meeting. Typically you'll have a final walkthrough with the contractors, a fire marshal visit if it's a building of some sort, things like that. You may even do a handover or a ribbon cutting, depending on the visibility of the project. It's a highly visible project. So a little bit about the basics now of CE&I. Again, that's construction, engineering, and inspection. So this aspect of any construction project is crucial for ensuring that the project is going to meet any compliance issues or regulatory standards that need to be there. This involves the actual small calculations of dimensions, things of that nature. And during that time, you're also doing quality control and making sure that things are designed within safety standards and any local or state compliance measures. So, looking at these project types listed, for example, on highways and roads and bridges, you're going to make sure that the foundation of the roadway is sufficient to support the concrete. All of the signage and the markings are correct based on Department of Transportation standards. For things like ports, you may be looking at the berth of ships and is there enough draft on the ship as it comes to the port. You may be looking at moorings. Are they capable of handling the types of ships that are going to moor to them in the port? Wastewater, water, sewer systems, you're going to be looking at the flow rates. So again, this is the more complex aspect of construction. And this is where the nuts and bolts get put together, so to speak, to make sure that the project is in fact viable and will work as constructed. And then we'll look at the basics of building inspection. So this is the actual boots on the ground, as I like to call it. These are the people that are actually going to the project site as it's being constructed. and physically inspecting each of the elements of the project. So not only are they, helping the project management team look at the time and the budget, is the project on time, is it under budget? But they're also actually looking at the foundation. Does it have cracks in it? Is it level? Is the framing properly installed? Are all the doorways in the right spots? Are they the right heights? They're going to be checking electrical, plumbing, and mechanical. Those are often grouped and called MEP. They're going to make sure, one, they're installed according to the design specifications, and two, that they're in compliance with any code regulations and things of that nature. So again, they're looking at all of the actual physically built parts of the project and making sure that they match with what was designed. So now that we've kind of covered those basics, we'll look at some new technologies that are starting to come about in the construction management industry. Now, this industry in the past has typically been a little slower to adapt, but with recent technological advancements, the construction management industry is really embracing this and trying to see how these technologies can enhance the things that are already being done. One of the biggest things that's out there, and not only for construction management, but in the world in general, is artificial intelligence and machine learning. So with artificial intelligence, there's a lot that the AI can assist the project management team with. For example, in terms of predictive analytics and optimizing schedules, the AI can look at past weather and work conditions and how did that affect the rate of construction. And it can actually help to optimize scheduling for times that are likely to have the best outcome. So for instance, AI can look and see, it's very hot in the summer. This can have safety problems. It can work maybe slower. So you may optimize the scheduling by scheduling, indoor type construction activities for the project during that time rather than outdoor. Or, it's particularly rainy at this time of year. We know we may have some delays due to that, so we'll build that into the schedule. So, and again, that feeds into your enhanced planning and design and your automated progress tracking. So using AI, you can actually produce design alternatives very rapidly. You can input your basic design and ask the AI to output some alternatives to that design that can then be looked through by the project team and picked out for which ones are the best. And AI can also take all the data that's being given to it by, say, inspectors, and automate progress reports that go to the stakeholders, go to the project team to let everyone know where the project is. So it saves time for the project team. With cost optimization, AI can actually pull monetary values for different materials from industry databases and put together cost estimates very rapidly. And it can actually help monitor fluctuations in real time and help adjust for material costs. You also have predictive maintenance abilities and automated defect detection. So this is in regards to your equipment. It could even be in regards to the building. There are sensors, which we'll talk about later. There are sensors and technology that can be embedded that will feed information to the AI and help alert the project team if there are any issues with compliance or if some material is defective for some reason. And then finally, all these types of things can be generated into a report, an overall project report, without someone having to physically go in and gather the data. The AI can be programmed to bring this data together and provide that report to the stakeholders in the project team. So it's very useful, very efficient for helping gather and track and utilize data that's available to the project team. Now, coupled with AI, typically you would use robotics and drones and different automation techniques. So, these technologies have become more cost-effective and precise over the past decade or so. Autonomous vehicles can be used for programmable type activities or repetitive activities such as, say, grading or material hauling across a site. And in using these, you can actually to some degree, enhance safety by having a programmed route. You kind of take the human aspect of safety issues out of the equation. Now, robots similarly can be programmed to do labor-intensive or repetitive types of tasks. And another plus about robots is that they can be implemented in tight or hazardous spaces, or spaces that you otherwise would not necessarily want to send a human. You can send in a robot to do that same activity by programming it to do so. And then 3D printing, some of you may be familiar with that, but it's a process of printing a design using materials preloaded in there. So you can prefabricate different materials for your project and have them either fabricated at the site or brought to the site. Now, drones are also like this UAV. So flying drones have become much more advanced recently and are great for construction management because you can easily use them to survey the site. Depending on how you have them equipped, you can even have 3D modeling of your site. You can have thermal cameras, and they can even test for other ambient air quality issues. Just depending on what you need, you can customize each drone for what you need it to look for on your site. Now, with this data that's all collected via robots, drones, things of that nature, you can actually upload the data into extended reality or virtual/augmented reality. So in essence, what you're doing is you're taking data and creating digital layers that can be overlaid onto a project plan, or say onto a 3D image of the site, so that stakeholders and project teams can more easily visualize different aspects of the project. So for instance, you could have the plumbing data all set in and then upload it on to a mobile device, and the project team can use that and go identify exactly where the plumbing is based on this overlay of information on the site. Now, the Internet of Things and sensor technology is a somewhat new thing. When I talk of Internet of Things, I would say to think of smart homes. So this is talking about a system where there are devices or sensors throughout a building, we'll say, and those devices and sensors are all connected to the internet and can speak to each other and provide data back and forth throughout that whole system. They can even turn things on and off. So in essence, it's a way of automating building systems. So with this, you have real-time data. You can access the data at all times via the internet because, again, all of these items are all connected to the internet. This can even be used in equipment and safety gear for personnel on site so that you can monitor if maintenance is needed on equipment. Maybe something's running hot, or you can monitor conditions for your workers. Maybe it's very hot for your workers, things of that nature. Again, all this data is transmitted in real time to decision makers to be able to work with. And then finally, what kind of ties all of these technologies together is advances in software solutions and cloud computing. Now, there are, just like with many industries, there are a variety of options out there for construction management software that integrate all of these things into one program. So some examples would be Procore or QuickBase or a multitude of others. A quick internet research will bring up quite a few. So these allow you to integrate your project management functions all together in one seamless platform. So different parties within the project management team that may be focused on specific disciplines, let's say, can all communicate across one platform about what's going on, which allows for better synergy between those project teams. It also gives you the ability to have a digital document system. So this brings you from having a lot of paper documents that can be lost or damaged, and it centralizes all of the data in one management system, again, allowing for much easier access for anyone on the project team that has been provided access to those documents. So, and again, All of that data can be put into dashboards for easy visualization of the data. So I'll point out in the image, you can see here, there may be different graphs or pie charts that will show you visually what some of this information really means for your project. So now that we've talked a little bit about some of the new technologies, let's look at some of the new techniques, so to speak, that this has brought about in the construction management world. So having all this data at their fingertips, project management teams can implement what's called lean construction. So this means that they use all the data they've collected to find solutions that minimize waste on their project site. So, less material used equals more productivity, more cost savings, and they can learn and adapt their methods depending on how the project's been going. So they can continuously improve, and the project delivery is enhanced by that. You also have modular construction and prefabrication. Now, this is something that has been around for a little while, but it's being enhanced again by advanced robotics, like you may find in an automobile factory, for example. The thought is that in an offsite factory, you can have much higher precision and efficiency at putting these building materials together that can then be constructed and put together at the project site. So in the image here, you can see they've got some prefabricated walls that are being craned in. So in essence, you would make larger pieces of a puzzle and then put it together at the site. So some new techniques that have stemmed from this technology in CE&I is the ability to do risk-based and predictive inspection scheduling. So typically in the past, you would have to have a set out schedule and somebody would go periodically to go inspect whatever may need it. So using the sensors, the AI data, and everything that we discussed, the real-time data, project stakeholders can optimize when inspections are needed based on what's actually going on at the site. Maybe we've had a sensor tells us that this material is failing, and so somebody can go and directly look at that rather than having to go hunt for a needle in a haystack. It can give you a much more precise ability to inspect issues with the project. And along with that, you can actually do remote and hybrid inspections. So using drones, cameras, and other data collection devices, that information can be sent to an engineer off-site who can look at that and make sure that everything is being built to plans and specs. And if anything's out of compliance, can note that and then potentially go on site to address it. Again, you can also have continuous monitoring. So because these are drones, they're non-human devices, they can be there and they can be running at all times. They can even be set to have alerts if some certain parameter is met. So for example, maybe the temperature in an area rises above 95 degrees. It can be set to alarm the project team to let them know some action may be needed there. Of course, you also can integrate various systems into your workflow for better collaboration amongst the project teams. So again, like I mentioned, these data platforms allow the project teams to see what everyone else is doing and better have an idea of where their discipline will fit in on the overall project scheme. And then finally, with drones, radar penetrating type technology with sensors that are built in, you can also do non-destructive testing. So, instead of having to take a concrete sample from the roadway that's being poured, you can actually use sensors to tell if that concrete is working as designed and as intended. So that allows for a much easier way to inspect things without damaging the construction that just happened. And then finally, so we've got new techniques in the actual inspections that are being done on site. So again, having the data about what's going on site from sensors or drones allows for the project management team to do predictive inspection. So rather than having to have someone on site, say every day, the data can be monitored remotely, and then inspections can be performed as needed as certain progress points are made, or if certain problems are noted on the project, the inspectors can be mobilized based on those things rather than having to be there constantly. With your integrated digital workflows, again, all the data that's being collected by each inspector, wherever they may be at or whatever they may be looking at on the site, can all be integrated into one platform for everyone to have access across the site. Again, for these types of inspections, also can do non-destructive testing. So, there are ways to I always point out ground penetrating radar, which is great for finding utilities on a site where you may have concrete or they're buried pretty well underground. And then finally, you have the ability to have enhanced digital documentation. So being able to have a digital form set up can oftentimes lead to better consistency of the information that's gathered by the inspectors. It can guide them in what information is needed so that nothing's missed and that a thorough inspection is completed. And then again, the project management team has instant real-time access to that data, which can be generated into a report directly from there with very little human interaction need. So those are some of the basics of where the construction industry is going and how that is enhancing the ability of project teams to more effectively undergo construction projects.
Thank you, Drake. Very good information there. We'll open it up to questions now. If anybody has a question, please feel free to enter it into the chat box, and Drake will do his very best to get you an answer. While we're waiting to see if there are any questions, just to remind you again that the presentation is being recorded and will be available for replay on our YouTube channel sometime before the end of the week. You will receive an email notification when that is up live. This is a monthly series of webinars that we do, so please check in with us on LinkedIn. Give us a follow, and you'll always know what the next topic is going to be and when the next webinar is scheduled for. We'd also love to hear your ideas about potential topics. What are some issues that you're facing that you'd like more information on, or that you think would be helpful for others in the industry to know and learn about? We would love to get your input. Feel free to drop us a message on our LinkedIn page. Again, Drake's email address is in the chat box. Should you have a question you think of later on, feel free to shoot him an email. I'm not seeing any questions currently being typed into the chat box, so I'll just wait for another few seconds here to see if anybody does have a question. As is usually the case with Drake, he does such a great job presenting that he just leaves no question unanswered. Okay, I'm not seeing anything in the chat box. Give it another couple seconds here before we part ways for the day. Oh, let's see. Well, you've received a compliment, Drake. Great job.
Thank you. And look, as Bud said, I'm happy to, I know sometimes questions pop up a little bit later on. Please don't hesitate to email me. Always happy to chat with people.
Okay, let's see. Another great job. Okay, we're just stroking Drake's ego at this point, which is okay. He did do a great job. but not seeing any questions in the chat box, I think we'll go ahead. Oh, let's see. We do have a question. What are your thoughts about the costs associated with the new technology? Should we absorb this or pass it along to the client? That's a very good question.
It is. It is. And so I think that, for the most part, typically the company that's doing this and to some degree is going to absorb some of the cost. Just like with any type of service, there's certain programs, equipment, things like that that you need in order to perform that in that industry. And so, I think some of that cost gets absorbed by the company. But then, of course, when you're billing your client, of course, you're building in some overhead and things like that. So I think it's a little bit of a balancing act. Obviously, you don't want to overcharge anybody. You probably won't get any work that way. So again, I think it's a fine balancing act of absorbing some of the cost and passing on cost where it's appropriate to do that.
And just to interject something to follow up on that question, I mean, at some point for companies, am I correct? It's just going to be a necessary investment because if you're not using those technologies, you will be passed up by your competitors, so to speak.
That's correct. I would absolutely agree with that. And the cost of these programs is becoming more and more affordable. The industry for the programs is becoming more competitive, and as we know, competition always drives up innovation and drives down cost. So over the next few years, I anticipate that this part of the industry, the technological aspect, is really going to accelerate, and I think it's going to be pretty cost effective for companies to utilize without necessarily having to pass on a quote unquote a cost to the client.
Okay, do we have any other questions? All right, I'm not seeing anything else enter the chat. Oh, okay. Thank you for the compliment, and you're very welcome. Again, this is a monthly series that we do, and we'll be doing another one next month. So please check in with us on LinkedIn, follow our page, you'll get notifications. Not seeing any additional questions. I think with that, we'll go ahead and bid you a good rest of your day. Thank you again for joining us. We really appreciate it. And once more, if you have any ideas or topics that you would like to see covered, please feel free to send us a message. You can message us through social media. You can message us through our website. We'd be very happy to take a look at your ideas, because this whole thing is about trying to help people avoid problems that may be arising on projects and solve those problems. So thank you again for joining us. Thank you, Drake, for the presentation. And with that, we'll wish you a good rest of your day. Thank you.